Welcome back to Panhandle Legends, where we highlight lesser-known local figures who helped shape the story of Amarillo and the High Plains. Today, we're taking a look at the story of Rick Husband, Amarillo's own homegrown astronaut and mission commander of the Space Shuttle Columbia. How's it going, King?
Good
Nice to
morning.
see
Thank
you
you
again.
again for having me as a guest.
Thank you for coming back. So, your most recent edition of Panhandle Legends is Rick Husband. What brought you to the idea of covering Rick Husband as a concept for this project?
I've always been fascinated by people who live larger than life lives, as it were. And Rick Husband, of course, is a homegrown hero. And his story, I didn't know much about him. I've seen this statue at the airport, but the more research and the reading I did, the more I learned just how fascinating his life was, how fascinating his service was, and how remarkable an individual, and that he truly was deserving of being considered a legend. And he is a Panhandle legend.
That's amazing. So, you mentioned not really knowing much about Rick Husband aside from seeing his statue at the airport. So, now that you've learned a little bit more about him, how would you describe the story of Rick Husband to a person who had only seen the statue as well?
Well, what strikes me as most fascinating is Rick Husband could be your next door neighbor. He could have been someone you went to school with. He could have been someone you knew in church. He could have been a neighbor. He was that type of individual. So when you think of all the people surrounding us in our daily lives, any one of those people could grow larger than life, depending on the circumstances and their own personal curiosity and courage and values. And Rick Husband exemplifies all those things to me. So I found it fascinating that here was a local person raised in Amarillo, went to Amarillo High School, went off to local colleges, and then went into the Air Force and on with his career. That he was such a talented, such a purposeful, such a driven, intelligent, courageous individual. I was really struck by his story.
Yeah, same. I think it's really cool that he, spent his entire early life in Amarillo, and then I think he went to Texas Tech after graduating.
Correct.
Before going
go-
into the Air Force and all that.
Yeah, I was doing some research on him and things I didn't know, but he had told his father at the age of 5 years old, "I'm going to be an astronaut." And you can imagine how many children tell their parents, "I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." And he knew at age of 5 that was his passion and that's what he wanted to do. And so his father had been a pilot, and
really?
and his brother was a pilot, was a commercial airlines pilot. So flight and that type of career pretty much came natural. But he was an extraordinarily hard worker, very gifted, talented academic person. And boy, talk about a work ethic actually beyond the stars. And so it was those personality traits that struck me because I look for traits in individuals. Are they kind? Are they this? Are they that? And Rick Husband seemed to have all those qualities. And so that's what really attracted me. And then, of course, his story is he rose from being a pilot and a test pilot and a fighter pilot, and then going into the space program and what he did in the early years in the space program. I'd really encourage people to reach out and read more about him, whether it be something they find on Google or another website, but his story is
Or perhaps
fascinating.
the context article you can find below this video. I think,
Exactly.
if I remember correctly, Rick Husband not only was the mission commander for Space Shuttle Columbia, but he was also part of the crew, the first crew that docked on the ISS before that. He went into space not once, but twice.
And what's interesting, I found out about, you're exactly right. What I found interesting about that is any of our astronauts or any international astronaut who does a docking with the International Space Station, they have to learn Russian.
Really?
Yes, they have to learn Russian to be able to control the dials, the devices, the equipment. They have to be able to read Russian instructional manuals because the Russians are the ones who developed a lot of this. And so
Wow.
the
I
astronauts
had no idea.
I didn't either. And so astronauts, I read, are required to be able to do that, to communicate and read and go through the processes.
That's crazy. So they're all at least familiar with two languages, or
Exactly.
wow, that's
Exactly. And Russian, I speak a little Russian, and I can say from personal experience, it is not an easy language just to pick up casually.
Man,
The
yeah, I've known one or two like casual Russian speakers in my life, and like, man, I could not follow for sure. So it seems like a rather difficult language to learn.
Right.
So
It's has a different alphabet. It has a Cyrillic
yes.
alphabet and stuff.
Hmm.
Anyway, I applaud him for that skill. Uh, I was struck by looking at astronauts in general. The term astronaut is from Latin,
Oh,
I
really?
believe. Yeah, and I believe it is, or it's Greek. Pardon me. It's astronautes, which means star sailor.
That's really cool
And so when you think about
and rather
sailors
fitting.
traversing the seas, the early ones like Magellan, Columbus,
Hmm.
all of those people, and how daunting that must have been to go onto an open sea, no landmarks, no visible things, and then you translate that into the 21st century, and we have star sailors such as Rick Husband, who navigated this vast openness that hadn't been traversed that much.
Still rather similar feelings, I guess.
That's
The more
that's
things
what
change, the more things stay the same.
that's what struck me was the
That's really
amazingness
cool.
of the yeah.
Man, it really is wild how you can find so many like similar poignant experiences throughout human history for like how people approach things like the sea, the unknown, versus the unknown stars. That's so cool.
You can imagine what type of individual, what type of courage, what type of personality. I keep using the word courage because to me, it's
It's
courage.
fitting, right? You have
You
to
know,
have a certain kind of spine, I would think, to
I get
go out into
I
the
get
unknown.
I get height. I can't think of the Greek word for it, but
Hmm.
I get fearful of heights.
Hmm.
Just getting on a step ladder, so I can imagine.
Oh,
Yeah, I can
that's fair
imagine
though.
going into space. What also struck me about Rick Husband was that he had such an incredible mind. He got a degree in engineering. He got a uh, mathematics. All of that just seemed to come natural to him. It was proclivity, and he loved it. I mean, according to things I've read, his wife wrote the most incredible biography of him called Higher Calling.
Oh yeah.
And I
Hmm.
would encourage people, if you're fascinated by Rick Husband, to get a copy of the book by Evelyn Husband
Hmm.
and read her biography. It's all encompassing, and I keep learning new and different facts that are intriguing about him and their life.
That's amazing. It's definitely on my reading list. I didn't know that she had written a book until I was reading about it yesterday, which I think is kind of a fun little unknown, especially given how, kind of ubiquitous the idea of Rick Husband is in Amarillo. So, what do you think makes so Rick Husband obviously had a lot of very admirable qualities generally as a person who managed to become an Air Force pilot, a veteran, as well as an astronaut and a mission commander. What do you think makes his story stick out to Amarillo specifically? Like, we have quite a few, as we've noticed so far in the Panhandle Legends series, we have no shortage of very cool, admirable people in our local history. So, why do you think Rick Husband is like someone we stuck with so um, fervently to the point where we put up a statue, have
I
an
think Rick
airport named
Husband is
after
an
him?
individual, and I think his legacy, his story, once again bring up the word undaunted.
Hmm.
And many of the people we're celebrating with Panhandle Legends were, in fact, undaunted. They were courageous. They were smart. They were driven. They were explorers. They were pioneers in many ways. And I think Rick Husband fits that mold.
Hmm.
Uh, he was undeterred. You can imagine the obstacles and disappointments. You certainly don't go to school and then become an astronaut. It's
Absolutely.
very rigorous. So he went through a lot of rigorous training and a lot of obstacles to overcome. And I think that's true of all the people we're celebrating, whether they be of the pioneer age, like our first episode, Frenchie McCormick, or whether they be of the modern age, like Rick Husband. And, Amarillo has so many notable people. You could have a gallery of statues celebrating all of them. But I think it's fitting that we named our international airport Rick Husband International Airport because that fits his mission, his legacy, and what he did. And the statue, I don't know the artist who made it, but the
Hmm.
statue at the airport is very fitting, very appropriate.
Hmm.
Inspirational is the word I'm looking for.
I think so. Yeah, it's definitely a sight to see. If you haven't seen the statue at the airport and you're ever passing through, I would encourage you to take a second to look at it because it's really a nice piece of work.
They also have an exhibit at the airport of Rick Husband.
Oh, the exhibit is still there. That's
Uh-huh.
awesome.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes. And so visitors are welcome to go and look at the photographs, pictures, and all that. And you can learn a great deal in a short amount of time. So,
Absolutely. That's amazing. I mean, there are worse ways to spend a layover for sure.
That's true.
That's wonderful. So, a lot of people around the area kind of have like memories of uh, the time around when the Columbia disaster happened. Were you in town at that time? Do you have any
Yes, I
like
was,
distinct
and
memory? What was Amarillo like at that time? Or
pretty
what
much
was
like
that
it is today.
or what was that
It
experience
was
like going
growing.
through it?
We had different things going on, but I was a school teacher,
Mhm.
and so I remember vividly the occurrence, hearing about it, the student reaction, my peers' reaction, neighbors' reaction.
What
It
was
it
that like?
it was stunning. It was like anything that happens of occurrence. You look at things today, and we become rather inured at certain things because
Mhm.
of our connectivity to the media, to images, to events happening. It
For
seems like
sure.
almost daily, nationally,
Yeah.
there's some type of incident that occurs. And so sometimes it can almost become passe, or you become used to it, inured, as I would say. But that incident stuck out, not so much because he was from Amarillo, was because of just the suddenness, the unnaturalness. And so they would show the video over and over and over of the explosion, of the disintegration of the capsule. And it was traumatic. It was visceral.
Yeah.
I mean, the reaction you took, you were taken back. And it was it was something that stuck in your mind. I'll use the word visceral. It was a very visceral image, and remains so to this day. And I've talked to former students who were, teens at that time, and I've asked them, "Do you remember that still?" And they're like, "Oh yes." And they talk about that with their children and with their peers. And I said, "That's amazing to me that after the time it has passed, that's still such a vivid memory to you." And they're like, "Yes." And then when you connect that with the fact that it was a local person, not someone from another state or another country, but someone homegrown,
Yeah.
it makes it even more important.
Absolutely. I still remember, I think one of the first times that I like really got a good um, understanding of the impact of Rick Husband and his story in Amarillo. I was at one of our local uh, antique stores and I saw um, w- what I thought at first was like mass produced merchandise, but it looked like upon a closer look, it looked like a very specifically like locally printed shirt with Rick Husband's face on it. I wish now that I had bought it. But if you look around the antique stores here now, every once in a while, um, you'll find like uh, specifically homegrown, like specifically designed merchandise with Rick Husband and the Columbia crew, and it just kind of like struck me how much um, hype was around that mission even before it took off and before its tragic end. Uh, it really kind of stuck with me. Like obviously it's a super uh, tragic story, but a part of me also really kind of appreciates it in a way, if only because of like the locally made T-shirts and the merchandise and the stories that a lot of people have about Rick Husband.
He became, and
Um,
I hate to use this word,
mhm.
but he became iconic.
He really did, and it's kind of one of those things that got me thinking about how like we're uh two additions into this Panhandle Legends project so far, right? But um what I'm starting to notice is this trend in like Amarillo culture, Texas Panhandle culture, where we're so ready to be on somebody's team for any reason. Like, oh hey, you came and hung out in Amarillo with your grandparents when you were a kid, and then you went to go do a fun TV show. Awesome, we're on your side forever. Or, hey, it's really cool that you were the last person to live in this neighborhood and you loved your husband so much. We really respect that. Or, hey, man, you graduated high school here and you got to go into space not once, but twice.
You're so
That's
right.
amazing.
You are
And I
so
think
correct.
it is so cool to me that Amarillo, like, you spend 5 minutes in Amarillo, and Amarillo and the Texas Panhandle are just, there's this sense that as a culture, as a community, it's just so grateful for those 5 minutes you spend with it, right?
That's
I think it's very sweet.
such an important observation that you made, Kane. It's true, and it's pervasive, and you see it, as you say, you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Whether it's good night celebration, whether it's the
Mhm.
XIT barbecue,
Right?
whether it's the musical drama Texas at Powder Canyon,
Mhm.
whether it's a museum, uh, whatever. You know, my father did the statue of Quanah Parker at the airport,
Yeah.
and I cannot tell you how many times local people, as well as friends from all over, have said, "Wow, Quanah Parker," and that happened in
Mhm.
that area. And I said, "Oh yes, the last battle was fought in Powder Canyon."
Mhm.
And like, "We had no idea. Tell us all about it." So you're exactly right. There's something celebratory. There's something different. Can't think of another word in our culture locally
Mhm.
that makes us want to revere and remember and
Yeah.
celebrate the people in the
Mhm.
area and the accomplishments that have happened. And you're exactly right.
It's
So that's
just
where we're hoping that this
yeah.
series, Panhandle Legends, will land as well. And I don't want this to come across as bragging, but I'm very grateful. As a former teacher, I've gotten phone calls from Laz Buddy Farwell, I think due to Maury, uh, but Laz Buddy Farwell. Oh my goodness, Neurovice, Panhandle, Pampa, Dumas, Dalhart,
Mhm.
all over Plainview, all over the Panhandle within the signal range of KMR, KCIT, have seen the episode teachers, and they're calling me saying, "Can we use this in the classroom?" And of course, the answer is yes. You know, can we show this to our students? And the answer is yes. So, going back to your very cogent observation, I think people are hungry and wanting good and wanting to celebrate good things that have happened and the unusual events that happened right here where we live. And there are many.
I think this is a really unique opportunity to do that, and I think it's always uh, good to find that kind of like. I think it's really cool that we have the opportunity to share in that um, spreading the chance to be enthusiastic about your community and these stories and in a lot of different ways. I know I'm learning a lot and appreciating a lot even just so far. So I hope that that is a takeaway for other people too. Just even if it's not somebody who ends up on this show, just um, like taking the opportunity to look for maybe lesser known stories and reasons to celebrate in your community since we have quite a lot of them.
It's
So,
there. All the mysteries are there. All the romance is there. All the drama is
mhm,
there. I'm a playwright as well as a theater director.
mhm,
And so I look at the stories of the Panhandle and our people. Shakespeare would have loved us. I mean,
absolutely.
it's got all the intrigue, the heroes, the heroines, the villains. It's got it all. And as you said, I would encourage people to make a field trip, to investigate on their own, to
Mhm.
do solve the puzzle, find
Yeah.
the clues. Go to McLean, Texas. Go to Dalhart. Every little community in our area has a wonderful story or stories that are
Mhm.
almost hidden little gems to be discovered. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And thank you. And of course, if you want an easy opportunity to dig into one of those local stories, of course, you can visit Rick Husband International Amarillo Airport and see the Rick Husband exhibit and visit the statue. Um, yeah. Is there any other takeaway from this story that you think people should remember as we kind of start to close out?
I would encourage parents to listen and look and watch for signs from their children about what they may desire to be and foster that. Uh, it could be archaeology, it
Hmm.
could be astronaut, it could be anything. We have a young friend who's 4 years old, about the time that Rick Husband, five, discovered he wanted to be an astronaut. And I was asking him the other evening, I said, "What is your son interested in?" And they said, "Mayan culture
That's
and
rather
Greek."
specific for a 4-year-old.
That's
That's
what I thought.
impressive.
That's what I thought. And Greek culture
Hmm.
and Greek legends and Mayan culture. So they're going to take their son to Mexico this summer so he indeed can see the Toltec and the Aztec and the Mayan cultures and learn more about them.
That's
And who
amazing.
knows, this young man might grow up to be an archaeologist or an ethnologist. Who knows?
That's super awesome. And of course, there's local opportunities to do that kind of thing for your kids here. Like the Discovery Center has exhibits on like all sorts of things, from modern science to what the Panhandle was like when it was an ancient ocean. A lot of different history museums and activity centers. So I would encourage everybody to look locally to see what sorts of resources your kid might be interested in as well.
I would end my comments just by saying I would encourage everyone, whether they're young, whether they're children, young adults, people my age, whatever, to keep exploring. That's what Rick Husband did. He was an explorer. So I would encourage each of us in our own lives to get out of the chair, turn off electronic devices, and explore. Explore what's out there.
Absolutely. Go have an adventure. I think that's a fantastic takeaway. And I think a wonderful note upon which to end this episode. So thank you for joining us for this edition of Panhandle Legends, and I hope you'll tune in next time when we talk about what we have up next.
Father Padilla.
Oh, very fitting for November, I think.
Well, what's interesting, and I don't want to give it away totally, but the first Thanksgiving service, giving of thanks, was not in El Paso. It was not in Esleta. It was not at Plymouth. It was in 1541, and it was in our very own Paldera Canyon. So watch for the next episode and learn about that.
I'm certainly very excited too. Thank you again for joining us, and thank you, King. We'll talk to y'all next time. Have a nice day.